Okay, we're here.
Good morning, Billy. Thank you for joining us. If we seem tired, this is the second one of these in the day, and as you know, far better than us. Hosting can be a little bit tiring, but hopefully we'll put you on the hot seat, and you can carry us for today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's kind of a role reversal for me, so I'll do my best.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Um,
let's mention what Billy does for those who watch this and aren't sure about it. The Coach Your Brains Out podcast, and that's something that should be on if you're a new coach and you're looking for, or even an experienced coach and looking for some perspective. That's a really good place to go.
yeah,
Thanks.
Steve and I
Yeah,
were just talking about that. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. No, I do a coaching podcast with John Mayer, the other John Mayer. We've been doing it for a long time now. He does most of the work, but I'm happy to tag along.
We were just talking about the going back and listening to some old episodes. I got hooked in those first four, five, six episodes that you guys probably would cringe at nowadays, but I think those are some of the best episodes. Watching you get up on your feet and go through the newness of it all, learning how to run a podcast. Do you ever think about revisiting those or?
Yeah, we should. I think we've done a couple like rebroadcasts, and it does make me cringe. Um, but yeah, to start, we went to a Tom Black and Trevor Reagan hosted a kind of a seminar, and we were so inspired that me, John, friend Niels Nielsen, and Andrew Fuller wasn't even a part of it then. We got our iPhone out, set it down, and just started talking coaching, and that's where we started. And yeah, it's gone up. It's grown a lot since then and changed. We have microphones and everything, but at the heart, it's still the same thing of us trying to learn and bringing people on that can teach us about volleyball.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question. What inspires you to start a podcast? I mean, I didn't have any thoughts about doing it. Steve called me one day and said, "Hey, let's do this." And you kind of told us how you got going, but what's the inspiration? Why do you want to even broadcast something rather than just sit around and talk to your buddies?
Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe that would have been a better better solution a lot of times. No, I think like I'm very inspired by what I read, what I see. So if I read a good book or listen to a good song, I'm like, oh, I want to do that. John Mayer and I are good friends and competitors on the AVP, and we chat podcasts we liked, and it was like, oh, we should do one of those. And obviously both of us had a passion for volleyball, and so that naturally was what we gravitated towards. And again, we didn't plan on releasing it at first, but then like from what I knew about podcasting, it was still pretty early and very accessible. Like you can just record it and throw it on. So we did it, and we've never been good at advertising, which is great because it gave us a long head start before people actually started listening. So yeah, that's how we did it.
Yeah, it was. We were just saying offline, listening to the first couple episodes. I got hooked there because you could tell, you guys were being honest about what you were talking about. You were upfront about, hey, we don't really know what we're doing here. We want to talk volleyball, and it was a great learning experience for me just listening. And then it wasn't too long before you started getting some guests on. You guys went a different direction than we did, where you went for some big names and got them. And some of that is because you guys have that. You run in those circles to some degree with as AVP players could get some of those people. But I find now you guys have really branched out and gone to some places and gotten some people um, outside of volleyball that have been good. What putting you on the spot? What are some of your favorite, or maybe not favorite, but what are some of the interesting outside of volleyball conversations that you guys reached for on your podcast?
Yeah, volleyball is kind of our central topic, but any kind of learning and coaching And so I think some of our best guests have been authors of books that are related to leadership or coaching or culture. I know early on we got James Kerr, who wrote Legacy, and that was a huge get for us. And there's so many lessons that you can take away from, whether it's rugby or baseball, and apply it to volleyball, obviously, and how humans work and players want to be treated. But I would throw back and say one of my favorites is BJ when you came on, because I think sometimes we get too heady and theoretical, and you gave us really practical answers on how to deal with common problems that come up in coaching and coaching club and stuff. So even though we've had Karch Cry a couple times, BJ, you're one of my favorites too.
It was a blast for me, and really an honor to be on. Probably where I got the bug for doing this a little bit more when Steve asked. It was an easy jump. I did go back and listen to that podcast a couple of years later, and it is a little bit cringeworthy in some places for me, but it was super fun. One of my favorites is Bernie Holiday. You've had him on. He just it's incredible to listen to him. I know it's baseball, and that's another fun topic for me. But I loved what he was selling. I wish he'd write the book. I'd love to. I think you guys encouraged him to do that too. It would be fun to read about what he does. And speaking of writing books. Coach Your Brains Out led to, I think, your first book in writing. And there are certainly more, but there again, speaking of the topic of new, what makes you guys go out and think, okay, we can write this book?
Yeah, I guess ignorance. No, so I've always been into writing and storytelling. I studied creative writing in college. My senior year, I made a full-length action movie with the men's volleyball team and a handful of other sports teams. So it's always been a passion of mine. After college, I made a bunch of videos called Kinda Good with this character, Danny Kinda, which was kind of volleyball spoofs. So creativity has always been, like, other than the volleyball side, one of my passions. So I have a couple of fiction books there that have nothing to do with volleyball, or at least very little. And those are just, passions. I work on those for a couple of years. Nobody buys them, but the volleyball books, just because of our, maybe who I am as a player and our podcast platform, actually sell okay. So so a variety of interests, but I enjoy it. I think, just like the podcast, even if you start kind of rough, like, just do it. Just get out there and start working, because you can get better and better. And for me, BJ, if you and I are both cringing from our old episodes, that means we're growing. And hopefully I'm, cringing about this conversation in 5 years from now, because I'm so much smarter.
You mentioned Trevor Reagan in his recent podcasts that he's done. He mentioned the same. He went back and listened to some of his old work, and he does this even at a bigger level than what you and I do. He makes his living going around and talking about learning, and he's expanded well beyond sports for sure. But he said the same thing. There are so many things that he thought he maybe said wrong in his first couple of years, even as his popularity was growing. So I think you're right. I think it's just takes some time and making those mistakes for sure.
My advisor back at Buffalo. So I went back and got a master's in creativity studies from Buffalo State, which is where brainstorming got started years ago. And my advisor there said, "Jump and the net will appear." And it's even funnier when you think of it about it in the volleyball context. But it's definitely served me well, although I could jump more. I think that's kind of why we got started here. I met BJ at CAP clinics at Adversity years ago. Probably before that. I think I met you when I went up for one of the clinics, the refresher clinics up in Wisconsin before Adversity. And I'm like, oh, this guy seems to know everybody, and I don't. So I think I think I can do the technical stuff if he'll go and be the producer. And so it's been a really great opportunity. It's very selfish. We learn so much from this to make us better coaches. And
I'm just dumb enough to ask. I think that's
well,
that's my
keep
best
being
quality.
dumb there. You're doing a great job.
Hey,
Yeah.
Billy, you
And
mentioned
I'll,
that AVP. We would be crazy not to talk about that just for a little bit. You made a big, at least in my estimation, you made a big jump this year. Talk about your partnership this year and having. I could make the argument. I don't know if you would say it, but I can make the argument that you maybe had one of the best seasons you've ever had, if not the best. Tell us how you kind of squeezed into that this year and how that all went.
yeah, I think I've always been a late bloomer. So I'm 42 now. I guess I was 41 during the season, which is a really cool thing about beach volleyball is that you can play for so long. I think the last couple of years, every year I've been like with my wife, like, oh, this could be the last year, taking it, 1 year at a time. I played with a couple different partners at the beginning of the year, Andy Benish and Troy Field, and Troy and I, made a final, which was surprising. But I still felt good. And then after that, he went to play with somebody else for FIVB reasons, and I had the option to play with the legend Alisson Cerruti, Brazilian legend. I think he has gold, silver, and bronze, or at least gold, silver, yeah. And then the problem was he doesn't have any AVP points, and so even though he's an awesome player, I was still on the fence about it. Like, I'm gonna have to play in the qualifier. I'm to fly to Virginia, and like, I might not even get into these tournaments in Hermosa and Atlanta. And then, so at the time, it seemed like a risk. And I was like, oh, he's also pretty old. Like, maybe he's not training as much anymore. But and decided to do it instead of taking maybe more of a sure thing as far as being with a partner that I could be in the main draw with. And then I fly to Virginia. We get there a couple days early. And from the first time not even pepper, the first time we like threw the ball, I was like, what was I thinking? This is awesome. I got to, I've watched this guy play for a long time, and just to be able to share a court with him. And other than being like a big physical player, he's a very smart player. His blocking moves are, he has very high volleyball IQ. And then he's just probably the most supportive partner I've been around. And maybe it has to do with, he's not trying to get a gold medal anymore, so he's more relaxed. But no matter what, like I felt, very comfortable being on the court with him, and that we were both supporting each other. And we ended up doing, we got second in that one. We won the next one in Denver, and then we got a third in Hermosa, and just, had a great season. And it's funny to think that I even like hesitated to play with him, but no, it was definitely a treat.
He helped you win a tournament outside of Seattle.
Yes, never been done before, so.
That's what an honor to play with him. He's the perfect kind of partner for you, and it looked like as the season was going on that you guys really just were feeding off of each other pretty well. I wondered if he was going to be that kind of supportive partner. I'm glad to hear that he was. Probably the reason he's had so much success, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
year.
there's some partners that, when stuff gets tough, they're like, frustrated or pointing at you. And he was always, taking the blame. And there's always something that he could do better. And that's something that I've, always prided myself on as a partner too. And to take ownership of situations and how can I help those around me better. So it was a lot of fun.
And you finished first in points. So that tells me you have to go back and play again next year, unless you're that go out on top guy.
No, they'll have to drag me off. No, it's a little weird because total points for the year, yes, because some teams are trying to pursue the Olympics, and so they miss some tournaments. But I'll still take number one.
Yeah, yeah. I would never. I wouldn't talk down about that. It's a great accomplishment. by you guys. That's awesome. Um, let's talk a little bit about a question we ask everybody. I kind of know the answer to this, so I'll ask it in a little bit different way. Normally, we ask people how they got into volleyball, but it was in your case, was it just inevitable that you were going to have to play volleyball? I wouldn't say it was forced on you, but tell us a little bit about how you got in, and did you have a chance of really doing anything else?
Yeah, I guess I could have rebelled, but yeah, volleyball was our family sport. I guess the same way other people watch football on Sundays. My parents played. That's how they met. And as kids, we grew up around the court, whether it was grass doubles or they played on a 6-person co-ed league on tennis courts where they raised the net. So it was, I guess, not blacktop, but a hard surface. And then every Sunday we'd go to Oceanside Beach and just hang out at the beach and play all day. At first, we were only allowed to, kind of pass back and forth off the court. And eventually we got, older and stronger and able to get on the court. I played my first tournament when I was 10 with my dad. We won a grass tournament and yeah, had a lot of success. It was like I said, our family sport. I played in college and went on to keep playing and make volleyball my life, my passion. I likewise met my wife through volleyball, and basically all my friends are volleyball. So yeah, I don't know if I had much of a choice, but definitely a very strong influence.
Yeah, that's so you didn't come in because of your wife, but you met her through volleyball. That's how so many of the male players, at least in the Midwest that I know, that's how they got into volleyball. Was there was a girl involved. Same thing for me, and even uh, last night, Friday night, we got home from a late dinner and put NCAA games on. Yesterday, we're watching NCAA games. That's what you do as a family. When you were coming up as a beach player, I know this is getting a little bit off our topic, but you like playing outdoor. I'm assuming more than you did indoor. Um, if that's incorrect, you can, when you're answering, let me know. But uh, how, when you were learning to play, were you just out playing and you were learning from your opponents, or were you getting instruction from people? How did that come around for you as a player?
Yeah, so on the outdoor side, my first and major partner was my dad. I'm sure he gave me advice, but it was definitely not technical. It was more like, don't miss the serve. Um, but no, I think from modeling and then just playing a lot, that's how I kind of developed that side. And then he started a club for us. We lived in a small town, Fallbrook, San Diego County. So he started a club for us where we had coaches and stuff like that. And as far as beach versus indoor, like loved them both. I was always more successful on the beach. My friend Niels Nielsen and I won, 16s and 18s JOs on the beach. And then in college, I was, never a starter. I was usually like the utility guy. So I was the, second setter, third outside, second opposite. Would win a lot in practice, but just never really got consistently in that starting lineup. And so after college, when I went to beach, actually during college, we'd still like Ty Trambley and I would win a bunch of triple A's. And so I guess that's where I gravitated towards just because I was better at it.
The the AVP bios are, I know they're meant to be funny, but sometimes they're just brutal. Here it describes your time at Northridge after an undecorated indoor career as a setter at Cal State Northridge.
Yeah, not to blame them, but I wrote that. So
Oh, you did.
yeah.
I wondered because it sounds exactly like you're John Mayer talking about yourself. That's it just reads that way. That's
Well,
kind of
that's
perfect.
our equivalent of this is imposter syndrome week. So
Yes.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm
that's
my own worst enemy when I try to be funny.
yeah, it's no, that was funny. Um, so we asked you and Deetra Collins at the same time to come on. Both of you guys were in your first year, I believe it was your first year as Power Five coaches, both assisting indoor. She is now, we just spoke with her, and she's leaving that for the professional ranks. Before we talk about your future, let's talk about your year at Berkeley. How did that come to be, and how did you enjoy the Power Five Pac-12 experience?
Yeah, I wasn't planning on it. I was kind of right place, right time. My wife got a job as the director of ops for indoor volleyball at Cal, so she moved us over here. And then I was planning on, I didn't know what I was going to do. Take my kid to school and write, and maybe coach club. And then 2 weeks before the season started, the head coach stepped down and moved on to a different job. And so they were kind of scrambling. And because it was so last minute and I was around, I was able to come in and help out as the assistant coach. So it was right place, right time. I really enjoyed it, and it was a great opportunity. And I was only contracted for the season, so that ended on Thursday. We had our banquet, and it was sad to see the girls go, because even in that short amount of time, I really got to know them and work with them. And I would love to have stayed on. That's kind of what the contract was, and I learned a lot. And it was an awesome season. And they did, they had some big wins for the program that they haven't had in a couple of years, so that was exciting as well.
Without getting too far into the minutia, when you joined as an assistant, obviously you had played Division I volleyball, so you knew what was involved. But were there things about the coaching that were surprising to you? The level of detail, I'm thinking about the scouting and statistics and the video and everything that's going on, or was that just, did it just feel pretty normal to you what you had to do?
Yeah, I had the same thoughts going in. I'd coached club throughout my career. The last 2 years, I've coached indoor, like a 16s and an 18s team the same year. But I was like, college Division I, this is going to be a big jump. I better do some homework. So I did what I could. I knew going in, I'd be working with the setters as the setter coach. So that was a lot of my focus. And then scouting, because, it's a lot different than club as far as how much time you have with the athletes. 2 days a week is a lot different than, going 6 days a week. So, I did what I could. I watched a lot of Gold Medal Squared, a lot of other resources. But I was also surprised at how similar it was. And sometimes, jumping into this college seems like this huge difference, but at the end of the day, it's problem solving. Like, what do we need to work on, and how can we attack it and give them, stress them out and give them reps working on it. And then they want to have fun, even though they're high level volleyball. Like, if they get a chance to play queen of the court or something, like, they're all in. And they like to goof around in vans just like club girls, and so there is a lot of similarities, which surprised me. With all the extra work that goes into just having more time with athletes.
I did this opposite of you. I was coaching college, and then went to take over a high school program. I now, with the high school, I miss being able to advance scout. I don't watch much video after the matches, but before, I was doing a lot of scouting the passing and serving, a little bit of defensive work, and now I feel blind going into almost every match. For you, you got the opposite. All of a sudden, you can watch every match of every team that you're playing in advance. Did you do much of that kind of stuff? Did you jump all into that, or did you just spend, like you said, much more time thinking about your own team, your setters?
Yeah, I would for sure. And I think depends on how long ago you did it, BJ. Like, it's gotten a lot easier with some of the technology and being able to not just have to fast forward through a whole match. You can break it up into clips. So that's a huge time saver. We had a coach, Sav Rennie, who was kind of our head of scouting. So she would do a lot of the work, but we'd all, watch our opponents and look for tendencies and chime in. The tricky part for me is not getting too prescriptive because, girls really want answers. And at this level, a hitter can do a lot of things. And so it's, as much as you want to say like, oh, just take her line, we'll be good. Like it's not exactly true. And there's, these girls can rip angles. So I think there's some, it's a tricky balance of like preparing them without making it very planned and scripted out, because you still want them to be able to read and make decisions on the fly rather than just kind of, running down a list of things we told them.
Yeah. Hey, real briefly, only because we have this in common, you got to work with your wife. You mentioned she was a Dovo. So not really working side by side, but you definitely have to work together. How did that go for you guys? Was it fun to work with each other? Could you leave it at the gym, or does it come home with you? Tell us a little bit how that relationship went.
Yeah, it's probably different for everybody, but Janelle's awesome and she's very patient. We're both pretty easygoing. So, and we've coached club together for a number of years. So we have a history of working together. And I think, we see pretty eye to eye and I guess listen to each other. And as much as she was the director of ops, she traveled with, so maybe not as hands-on the court. She travels with us and she's in charge of that. We stay together on every road trip, and she gets loud from the bench, even though she's not supposed to. So she has some things to say as far as the volleyball. No, but it was great. And, some people don't take volleyball home and they kind of cut it off, but, we're happy talking volleyball all night because we're both passionate about it.
That is why I need this, because not like you two, my wife has absolutely no interest or background. Actually, I can't say that. Our first date, I took her out to the gym to play with some rec friends of mine, and one of my friends broke her glasses. So that wasn't like, okay, maybe this isn't the best thing. But
you got to seal that block, Steve.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Nice move. Yeah. It's really one of those things where but the support is there. It's like, okay, go do what you do. I do what I do. And, whatever you need, you have. And then my son played and she did her gym time. But it's one of those things where I think, regardless of where it comes from, you need the support to be able to put the time in, because we put a lot of time in, and especially for club or high school, middle school coaches, don't ever, if you do get compensated, don't figure out your hourly rate. You don't want to know.
For sure. It's a question we asked of Deetra was she has such a storied playing career, Olympics and Player of the Year a couple of times, All-American 3 times. We asked her if her playing career gave her some immediate credibility with the players, and I'll tell you a little bit about her answer after we hear if you felt that same thing, like if just the fact that you can get in the gym and you can play with them, and they ought to know a little bit at least about your playing ability. How did you use that to your advantage, if you did?
Yeah, I think the girls looked me up enough, so it wasn't something like I came in and said. I never talked about myself, and it's the same with club. Like I never come in. I've had coaches where it's like, hey, I did this and I did that, and that's never been my approach. So maybe some people thought I was just kind of this beach guy that showed up, and maybe other people, knew I did some, a lot of coaching and stuff and podcasting and stuff. But it's never about me. And I think how I guess got credibility was just, all our discussions on them as athletes. I'm here to help them get better, and I'm not coming in telling them I have all these answers, which might hurt credibility, but it's just a process, and we're going to figure this out together. So that was kind of my process.
Yeah, Deetra was the same. She said when she joined the Arizona staff that she had played so long ago that, and doesn't play at all anymore. That the kids did not know her as a player at all. They didn't know anything about her history. So she was working on, just like you said, building the relationships and talking with the players and building that credibility. And Steve, did she say somebody tipped them off or somebody went to look?
Somehow they started digging in a little bit around mid-season, and all of a sudden they're going, "Oh, wait a minute! You played in the Olympics, and you played pro, and you coached at all these schools, and all of a sudden," she said, "the trust level went up." And it's that whole you use the same word. It's them developing the trust in your guidance. You're facilitating them, as opposed to, I found this with, apart from volleyball, when I'm teaching. I spent a number of years teaching engineers, and they always wanted the answer. And I'm like, no, guys, the courses we're teaching are interdisciplinary design courses. There are no right answers. And they drove them nuts. It's like, no, there must be. And I'm like, no, there are good answers and better answers and not so good answers, but there's no right answer. You just have to go out and develop the ability to figure out what a better answer is. And, that was, I think, what she experienced. They started to trust her guidance towards the end, because they're like, oh, she's trustworthy. It's nice. I think it's a better way to earn it without having to go, here's my resume, because sometimes the resume doesn't really, there are plenty of folks with good resumes who don't earn trust very well.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think they care less about what I did in Seattle in 2018 or something than just how to make them better.
Right. What does he think of me today, and what did I learn from him today? Is more important than, having played in the Olympics even.
You've definitely gotten the coaching bug now. We know you've coached at a couple of different places and a couple of different levels, and you kind of sprung it on us this morning that that you are maybe taking a new opportunity. What Tell us about that, and what's your motivation for taking that all on?
Yeah, I think I always thought volleyball was playing beach was an awesome lifestyle, and it's allowed me to travel across the world, meet again my wife, all my friends, and just try to pursue mastery in something that I loved. And it's so cool that I've been able to do that for way longer than I thought. If you had told college me that I'd be playing AVP and competing against all these guys, like, I never would have believed you. So it's definitely a dream come true. But with how cool of a lifestyle it is, it's a pretty crappy job. And at this stage of my life, kind of moving into coaching more and more, I'm like just doing this experience at Cal has really opened my eyes that, like, one, this is fun. Two, it pays well at certain levels. And then three, like, I can get better at this every year. Where beach, it's getting harder and harder to side out, but I'll be better coaching next year than I am this year, and so on. So that's really encouraging to me. I'm gonna, as I guess this is a scoop, because I just signed the letter yesterday or 2 days ago. I'm going to coach this coming season at Stanford for the beach side. So working with Andrew Fuller over there. I had to find something close in the area because Janelle loves her job here. It's a little bit of a drive, but Stanford will do.
When I was out at I was in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center. Got the chance to speak with the Air Force coaches, and of course, those guys, the athletes at Air Force, are ridiculously intelligent. Um, they're they're the cream of the crop as students, and um, the way it was described to me is, if you are not very specific about what the drill or what the activity in practice is supposed to do, they will immediately transfer to figuring out ways to win the drill, whether it's the thing that you want them working on or not. I'm wondering, and it'll be interesting to talk to you a year from now, you're going to be working again with the cream of the crop of students. You're going to really have to be on your A game with with these student athletes, because they're students, for sure. You have any sort of hesitancy about working with such a young group of incredibly intelligent athletes?
No, I mean, I think it makes you a better coach. I think you should have whys and reasons for what you're telling them. I'd say it was similar at Berkeley. Like these girls are very smart, and you had to, give them a reason for what you're doing, or at least it was helpful to. One of the things going into Stanford, I asked the assistant coach was just, about the girls, and she said that same thing, BJ. Like they're very evidence based, and so like if you can show them numbers on why this is what we're teaching, they'll buy in, and if not, you have some work cut out for you. So I think
Well, the
that's
nice thing. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I think that's important at any level, any place. But that's cool that players are like so interested in their own learning and development that they have those questions.
I work with professor. I work in coaching executives as well, both budding entrepreneurs all the way to experienced folks. And it turns out I work with professors at Berkeley and at Stanford. And so I think, check those programs out. The business schools have some really, just as an example, they have really excellent programs in storytelling that you might find that an interesting way to get kind of the empathy out of it, the beyond the technical part of the sport. And both schools have really excellent programs in those fields. And I've always been interested in trying to get my kids to problem solve and that whole creativity element, particularly because you have that creative element in kind of your makeup. That could be a really interesting place to play in addition to the beach.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to crashing into some classes.
You definitely should. Some really good
Luckily
stuff.
for you, Andrew's been there a couple of years. Obviously, has proven himself. The culture is established. How are you feeling about going into that? You've the program is rolling. What are you thinking? Your first couple of things are that. How do you help them right off the bat?
Yeah, I think with him being there for so many years and establishing a culture, it's a really good opportunity for me to learn. This year we were all new coaches at Cal, so we were kind of on like thrown into the fire. So I think that'll be awesome for my own development. My first step is to observe. Instead of coming in needing to prove myself and talk a lot, like just see where their athletes are at and what they need to work on, and what their goals are. My first step is to observe, and then I've one thing I did at Berkeley that was very valuable was just to have individual meetings right away with the players. One, to get to know them, like show them you care and you're interested in them as people. I think goes a huge way, and it's something that served me well at Berkeley. So I would love to meet with each player, and that would be my first step, and kind of see what their volleyball goals are and what they need to work on, and just kind of how they see their own game, and make it a conversation and a collaboration.
I'm looking forward to watching that too. How you guys all interact, and obviously they're at the top of their game. It will be fun to see how the spring unfolds and what happens there. Let's jump back to, because we're starting to run short a little bit of time, but I wanted to talk some about Internight. Um, I'd like to hear your take on first the book, the story of it, and then I've my copy was supposed to arrive Friday, so that I was a little bit better prepared. But I did speak to a couple of people that have read it, and everybody that I know of, the obviously volleyball coaches, are all talking about how important of a book it is for them. Almost, I've heard the word parable used, and then just the exploration of our own abilities and faults and mistakes. Tell us where your motivation comes to write the book, and then what you are hoping people get out of it, I guess, particularly for the coaches in us?
Yeah, so it's a hard book to explain because it is a fiction story, but it's it's a parable, sports parable. So it's written to be lessons for coaches and athletes. It's a quick read. One of the goals was to be able to get it, ideally as a team read for college players or high school players or club players. So it's short, hopefully entertaining, and sprinkling some messages in throughout the story. The inspiration was we had read a couple of books similar, like Chop Wood, Carry Water. We knew was pretty popular, and then like kind of like you said, like Bernie Holiday has been one of my favorite guests on the podcast, and just anytime talking about like the mental side of the game, I was perked up and was very interested. And so Mayor, my co-host, was the one to push me. He's like, "Oh, you should write one of those, kind of like Chop Wood, Carry Water." And we went back and forth on, I guess, the sport, because we were like, oh, volleyball, if it was a volleyball book, only volleyball players would read it. So I found something even more obscure than volleyball, and we did jousting. But we thought it was kind of like an archetype of a night training for a tournament. One, it would be more exciting than just somebody spiking a ball as somebody maybe fighting for their lives. And I was able to throw in a lot of stuff that went on in my mind when I competed, and it's messy in there. We have at any level a lot of doubts and fears, and players that go through that should know that it's natural and they're not alone. And so basically I had this story, and then wove in, there's a mentor character, and just a lot of lessons that I've learned through the podcast and as a player, kind of on the mental side. And there's some practice stuff in there thrown in as well. But that was kind of the goal. And yeah, it's cool if people like it. Again, it's hard to explain, but it's a quick, easy read, and hopefully enjoyable.
Yeah, everybody that I've talked to about it and they are starting to hand it out to their players, and hopefully we can get it to stay as one of those staples, in our sport or in others. Just because of the breadth of information that you've taken from to squeeze into that work. It occurred to me, you study creative writing at Northridge. There's a big difference between learning to write and then writing something that people will read. There's a wide gap. Just like in coaching, a big difference between teaching somebody about how to put your hands this way, your feet that way, and actually going out and executing a play or winning a play. Huge difference in that. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And I think in both cases you keep the other person in mind, right? Like if I'm writing, I have to think about a reader and what would be entertaining to them. And it's not just like writing to entertain myself, although that's a part of it. Like you want to write the kind of book that you want to read, but as a coach, it's not like what you're saying, it's what they're hearing. And so you have to keep the player in mind and really help guide them. Not just, it doesn't matter how much it's what you can transfer to them. So I think I see parallels in that as well.
It's funny. One of the best storytelling lessons I got was first. I'm at the National Storytelling Center with a group that I belong to, and they have this guy come in and he's talking, and he said, you really need to understand exactly what you just said, that the story you're telling isn't the story they're processing. There's something else going on between their ears. So don't assume if you told it to them, that's what's there. And there's, and he said, sometimes you find a story that's transformational, and he said, you'll know that when you try to tell the story and one of the people who's heard the story before says, no, you're not telling it right. This is, and they correct you and go and tell the story differently. But the example he used was a CEO talking about a merger, and that, in her mind, she was saying how it was, so synergistic. And he said, then the story playing in the Wall Street Analyst is, if you tie two rocks together, will they float? And I thought, yeah, what a great illustration of, maybe what I'm telling him isn't really registering. So maybe you've got to find another way to connect. And you have to kind of know that that's, the coach who goes, I tell him to do that all the time. It's like, well, that's not getting through. So try something else.
Yeah, and I think we know that analogies are important, even in coaching, and we learn a lot through stories. And so, I can read a bunch of bullet points or an outline for a book, but if you make it into an immersive experience, something they can really visualize, I think it sticks a little longer.
Absolutely.
So your your next book coming out is Royal Blood. I would assume, since we're starting to hear about that it's mostly done, which means you're going to have a little bit of time on your hands for personal stuff. What's the next? I know you're going to dive hard into coaching beach here at Stanford, but what's your next venture on a personal side? Where you go next?
Oh man, I'm always like so excited about my next project that the one I'm working on is is a lot of work. I wish I was closer to done with Royal Blood. That's the third book in my fantasy trilogy that'll end that. Working hard at that, just it takes a long time. It's a marathon. I do have some other interests. I would love to do another book with Mayer, another coaching book, maybe on the ecological side. I have a bunch of short stories ideas and other books to write, but I guess that's the big focus is Royal Blood right now.
The last 10% takes half of the work, right? It, that's how it always felt to me on projects in my real work life. You could get most of the way done, and then just the last little bit seems to take half of the effort. It's incredibly hard finishing a written work, for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I think with this, it's like there's no clear idea of when I'm done. Like I finish a draft, I can go through it again, and I can go through it again, and keep making it better and clean it up. So, yeah, that's a hard part.
an author on a podcast was just saying that the book is really never done. It's just that you meet up with the publishing date.
Yeah, if you're lucky enough to have those. Mine are self-published, so I've actually gone back as I'm writing Royal Blood and tweaked the first book just to line stuff up a little better. So yeah, you're right. It's never done. Always tinkering.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember
awesome.
having, I was a chemistry major in college, so we would go in and in inorganic chemistry, when you finish, the reaction you're doing goes all the way to completion. It's done. And then you get into organic in the second year, and it's always equilibrium kind of stuff. So we had this husband and wife professors, and the one in the lab there was Ma and Pa Trumbull, and Ma Trumbull, just would. One day she came over and she said, "Well, what do I do next, Professor Trumbull?" And she goes, "Oh, you know, yeah, heat it for another 5 minutes, stir it a bunch, and pronounce it done." And I think maybe at some point you got to do that with a book.
Good advice.
Um, so we're getting close to our hour, and just to be responsible and protective of people's time, last question for you. You, you weren't around or listening at the time, but did you have the same reaction about Bob Dylan moving to an electric guitar from his acoustic? Which Bob Dylan are you? If you're picking one up, is it acoustic Bob or electric Bob?
Yes, I was definitely not around at the time, but BJ did his homework and knows that I'm very into Bob Dylan. So I heard them all, when he'd already gone electric, and most of the music I listened to is later Bob. So I'll take electric. Although
Okay.
obviously I love the classics and just him and a guitar as well.
I
Well,
used to play
I guess
Hurricane
we
on
can
my
remain
10-watt
friends.
radio show years ago.
We just might argue about what goes in the stereo if we're ever driving in a car together.
BJ, what are your favorites?
I'm my parents, or my dad specifically, was a Bob Dylan fan, and he uh, almost does not recognize electric Bob Dylan.
Mm.
He wouldn't say it that way, but all the Bob Dylan albums in our house were, it's Blonde on Blonde and Highway 61 revisited, and it's all earlier Bob.
Oh,
So
those all have some rock and electric songs. I
yeah,
would
yeah.
say I would say my favorite album is Blood on the Tracks, and that has a lot of softer acoustic songs.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. Yeah, it was around our house for sure. There's probably a couple albums in the basement. I don't have a turntable at the moment, so I can't play the old albums, but I have a couple on the pod or on my phone that I can definitely pull up if I'm feeling a little nostalgic.
Well, my
It's
poor
probably good.
son.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, my poor son is having to endure it. So
Is he? Yeah, well, that's the way it goes. It
At
was
some
in our
point,
house.
he'll
It was,
appreciate it.
yeah,
yeah, the Beatles were forced upon us in our house, but I'm appreciative of that now.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. How is he doing? He's got to start. He's got to pick up a volleyball by now. Um, is he starting to show the signs?
Oh yeah, we just talking about like my own childhood. Like he's on that same path. I think being around the Berkeley team this year has been huge. He like comes to every game. He screams his head off, gets on the jumbotron, yells at the refs. Like he's just crying after the game if we lose. He's so passionate, and he wants to now play nonstop. We have a net we'll set up across the street, and we'll play two on one with my wife, or he'll just go out there and want to hit against the fence over and over, and we'll do a little pass set, jump and crush the ball against the fence. So he's wants to play nonstop, so he's got the bug.
That's cool. Is he tall amongst his classmates, or is he going to be a late bloomer, get tall when he's older?
No, he's huge. He's going to be able to beat me up in about 3 years. So
That's awesome. I can't wait to start seeing him rise up the ranks. It'll be fun to see what he does as a player. That's pretty cool. All right, Billy. Steve, you want to get us out of here? Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yes, Billy, it's been fun to listen to, and to hopefully being on the other side of the microphone is worked out okay for you. And anything interesting, fun coming up on Coach Your Brains Out that you want to pitch?
yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun, and I enjoy your podcast as well. BJ, you mentioned Bernie Holiday, and we're trying to do kind of a mental skills for coaches with him as a recurring host, kind of like John's doing with motor learning for coaches. So that's the plan. We're early stages, but I'd love to have that come out as well.
Yeah,
Awesome.
neat. I'll be looking forward to those. I love him as a guest, so that'll be fun.
Okay, well, thanks. And maybe we will get a chance to see you again soon. And good luck with the upcoming shift to Stanford, and have fun.
All right. Thanks, guys.